Cheers guys, my name is Tom, and since you guys have been so kind on the Can-Am Maverick forum with your information, so I just wanted to give something back of what I know regarding, in this perspective, suspension. So when I went through the thread, the suspension guy, I thought there might be some confusion with the suspension in regard of preload, high and low speed compression and rebound. So I'm just giving you a general explanation of how springs work and what linear spring and a progressive spring looks like and what it's on about, and then I go quickly to some details. So let's start with preload. As you can see with this 1:5 scale model and this spring here, which is a linear spring, each gap in between has the same width or the same gap to each other. It means when I add a force like the weight of your car to the spring is going to be compressed. Let's explain it that way. I add half a kilo to the spring. The spring is going to be compressed for a certain amount. Let's say I do the metric system, so half a kilo, and in this case 1 centimeter. So half a kilo makes the spring move inwards 1 centimeter, since it's linear. And if I add another half a kilo, it's going to move in another centimeter. The resistance within the spring is not going to be higher because it's a linear spring. A linear spring has the same resistance all the way through its available way of movement. And this is a progressive spring. So we have the smaller gaps here and the wider gaps there. And you will have to put more input on the spring here because there are more torsion forces needed to compress those turns here compared to those ones here. Those ones are like this and you compress them very easily, and the wider ones are the ones that will need more impact to be compressed. And that's what we're having on the Maverick X3. So when the car lands after a jump, for instance, all sections of the spring will be compressed. In normal driving situation, you will rather have the smaller gaps compressed. So that's very important to know. When you add preload through the shock and on the spring is more compressed. That means the ride is not getting stiffer with a linear spring. The ride height is the only thing that's going to be changed. So more preload means the car is getting higher or coming up a little more, or less preload, the car is getting lower with a linear spring. Preload added on a progressive spring is a completely different matter. So if you add preload on a spring that has wider and smaller gaps, the smaller gaps are more likely to be compressed already due to the preload, and you will have more of the wider sections left there. That means you're not only changing the ride height but the stiffness, meaning more preload, a stiffer ride, and less preload, the softer the ride gets. So there we have preload, and especially in regard of the Maverick X3. Up to the shock, it's got a progressive shock as well. In the beginning, in the upper bit where the stroke is at its beginning, and you have a high ride height, meaning the shock is going to be pretty soft, and when you using all the weight of the shock, it's going to be firmer. So ride height and firmness of the shock are going together. As lower as a car is set up, as more likely you're going to be within the firmer regions or the more resistant region of the shock. And that's the basic character. So bear that in mind. Ride height and shock firmness go together. And furthermore, we have two sections to play with: the low speed compression and the high speed compression. Low speed compression is a region that is in the shock regarding lower speeds of movement, meaning body roll. Body roll is a key movement for low speed compression. You're in a bend, you're in a turn, the car leans out. I've got hard sway bars here, that's why it's not going to move that good. But the car, you're going through the turn and the car is going to lean into the bend, and that's what it's going to do. And that's a typical low speed compression move. So, and there's, as always, there's a procedure to that, and we Germans love our procedures. So the low speed compression is defined by 15 millimeters a second, metric system again, up to 0.1 meters a second. So those are the speeds in which the low speed compression works. And this is the part where you can actually adjust what your shock is doing with the low speed compression. Tightening it in, the body roll will go away. Loosening the screw, the body roll will come. So body roll going away means that you have less body roll, and therefore the ride is more stable, but you will have more drifting and stepping out of the car. On the other hand, it's more stable and less likely to flip. Coming to the high speed compression. High speed compression is for entering big whoop sections where the whole suspension is going up and down pretty fast and coming out of the jump. And there again, tightening it up will add to the already progressive character of the shock itself, will self-prevent it from bottoming out. And so it's very important to have as much high-speed compression as needed, as little as possible, because you don't want a very shaky car when you're hitting whoops. You want it to be as stable as possible, but you don't want it to bottom out. So that's the problem you have to face when you're setting up a shock system. One thing I like to mention is that when you play with the rebound, rebound as well, when you like drifting as I do, playing with the rebound is going to give you lots of chances to make your car more willing to drift or less willing to drift. So those are things you should look out for when you set up your Maverick X3. Very important is I made an Excel sheet myself where I start to write down what kind of setup I have right now, and then I only change one thing at a time. So since ride height and shock firmness go together with the Maverick X3, I would always start with the ride height. The next thing I'm going to do is the low speed compression to get the roll in or out of the car. Then high speed compression. And the last thing I would do is the rebound. So that was it. I hope you guys, I was able to make you understand what I was on about. And if there are any questions, just write them down in the comment section. For everything else, cheers very cool forum. I really like that. That's why I'm doing my first and only video I'm doing in English. But I felt like it's important, and yeah, I'm really looking forward. It's only 1 more month to go till my Maverick X3 is here. It's on the ship right now. Looking forward to that. Christmas present for me. And yeah, roll on. Cheers.